Welcome to Unleashed with Scarlett Johnson, presented by Moms for Liberty. And today I have a special guest and friend, the very beautiful Amanda McKinney. Across the country, parents are asking a very simple question: who is really in charge of raising our children? And they're asking, they know the answer, but it's kind of a question being forced upon them. I had to post yesterday, Republicans in not Republicans, I'm sorry, in Florida, there were Democrats that were saying that I'm your kids' parents, like your kids belong to me. Same old from 2020. Again, we've got bureaucrats, people in education, or whether it's Hillary Clinton, kind of coming before us saying, hey, like your children are our children. And again, parents have to reaffirm the fact that no, these are not your children. These are our children. Children are raised in families, not by the government. And so I know that this is something in Washington state that is, it's a beautiful state, but
Yes,
there are radicals there that want to take over the job of parents, and that's not okay. So you're in Yakima County, you're a Yakima County Commissioner, and now you are a congressional candidate. So
Yes.
I want to talk about how you got started in local politics and what's inspired you now to run for Congress. So thanks for joining me, and let's go.
Thank you. And I'm absolutely thrilled to be here with you. It's always nice when we get to spend time together, but we've never done anything on camera. So here we go. I am Amanda McKinney. I'm actually living in Yakima, Washington. And if you envision Washington State, Yakima, and Central Washington, right in the middle. And, you know, I've actually grown up in agriculture, and we are a beautiful area, and our primary economy is based on agriculture. So rural communities like ours are very similar all across America. And, you know, we've struggled with a lot of various issues across administrations. And really for me, I was in real estate finance, and my family was always in agriculture, commercial agriculture, and we've got still some family that are still actively farming today. But I saw a great need for some proactive leadership. So many of our wonderful city councils and mayors and commissioners, supervisors, you know, anyone in elected leadership in rural communities, we all know they wear many hats. And what I kept seeing was just kind of a loss of hope and feeling like no matter what, we were being dictated to top down. Nothing was a local decision anymore. And I just realized that, you know, we really needed someone who was going to be assertive and be able to call out the wrongs, whether or not they were coming from your state capital or from the federal government. And I decided to get involved just to become a county commissioner and really be a strong representative for our agriculture economy, for our families who live here, and found great love in doing that. However, after I got in, COVID. And that was one of those really, you know, okay, God, I hear you, because I really thought I was going to be all about bringing, you know, business acumen and really working on legislation and policy related to economic development. And it ended up turning into this fight for freedom and liberty. And it was just really, it was like living in a different world. Everyone lost their mind. And in Washington state in particular, we had the longest shutdown. And I ended up becoming just a very vocal opponent to our former governor, Jay Inslee, who went so far as to, you know, mandate vaccines for workers. And it just, our children were being put in our homes where, I mean, the blessing, of course, is that then we got eyes, then we understood what was happening. But for me, it really exposed the fallacy of listening to the experts. Because we as parents have trusted for so long that those people who were, you know, doctors and people in the church and people in schools were absolutely guiding our children with love and compassion and nurturing them, but not in a way that was influencing them, that was different than what they might be hearing at home. And we found out that that actually was not true consistently. And that was across even rural communities. There were many churches that were in rural communities that were more conservative that shut down during COVID, and caved to this idea that we needed to give up our liberties. And Washington, for me, the ultimate hypocrisy was that you couldn't go to church to worship, but the liquor store was still considered to be an essential place that you then had to stay open. And just having electeds or bureaucrats in the health system telling me as a mom and as elected that, your kids are fine. Your kids are great. They're learning. Everything's wonderful. And here's what I knew. My husband and I were very blessed. We have a loving marriage. We've got 2 children. We have a yard and a dog, and we were able to, they have their own bedrooms. And what I knew about my community is that, we are actually in Yakima County, one of the most impoverished communities in Washington state. And I knew that there were children out there who were not in a home that was going to provide them with guidance on their schooling, probably wouldn't even have the resources or the internet to even get them engaged with
Wow.
school, and knowing that they were going to be exposed to some things that was going to be potentially harmful for them. And so really it turned into just an advocacy for kids and parents. And then as soon as COVID was over, it was off to, wow, we have a lot of regulations that have come out of situations like this. Chaos occurs. You know
Yeah.
what? We're going to create more rules so that next time the same thing doesn't happen. And then we wonder why we have so much control for us.
Yes. I was just discussing with my previous guest because she was talking about the chaos in Minnesota. And for tyrants, chaos is a ladder. Normal people like you and I, just your average American, they don't want chaos. It's human nature. We want things to just be calm. We want peace and security and tranquility. Chaos is not something that we desire, but for a revolutionary, a radical, somebody that's I think been kind of indoctrinated into these radical ideologies, chaos to them is a path. It's a way for them to achieve desired ends. So while normal people they're in this chaos and they don't know what to do, and maybe they're more quiet or they're fearful or they're anxious, that's where you can have these chaos agents come in and then they grab power. And then when the dust settles, you look around and you've lost rights, things have changed, and things don't snap back.
No.
We still have not recovered from COVID. And as far as what they've done to children, there will be children that will never fully recover from what was done to them. You can't fix taking 2 to 4 years away from a child, especially during certain formative periods. There's learning loss that won't be recovered. That will lead to income loss, destabilizations, and their lives are forever changed. For even the most well-adjusted kids, and I think I had very well-adjusted kids, they lost things they will never get back, and I think the stress, the post-traumatic stress, sometimes even affects them 5 years later in certain situations. So,
Mhm. Absolutely.
that is
Well, and they were lied to, and that is a very hard truth as a child who is believing in the structure of the system that they're supposed to trust. And they understood that they were living in a lie. And a perfect example for us is that I was watching a football game, um, practice rather, and this was during the height of COVID, and I was exposing how dangerous and really tragic it was that we were forcing our children to accept a lie. They were forced to play football outside wearing masks. The idea that so the actual physical health of these children was very willingly sacrificed to protect a small cohort of people who we could have easily sheltered in place and provided them with a lot of love and compassion, and services. And so they grew up knowing that, well, I'm wearing a mask outside, and it just, none of it made sense. And I think my son said it best. He was 7 years old, and by the time they went back to school, they were still wearing these masks. And he came home and said, "Mama, if this mask keeps me from getting COVID, why do I get to have a mask break 2 times a day?" Which, yes, of course, because they got to twice a day, they got to sit in their desks and take their mask off for 15 minutes. And and of course, I'm very honest with my children. And I said, "You're right, honey, that doesn't make any sense. It's because it's not actually doing anything to
Yeah.
protect you."
Yes.
But anyways, that was it. And
Okay,
and then
totally
of course the chaos that comes is in Washington, what I'm dealing with right now, which is this drive to have schools intervene when your child is just 13 years old and put them into situations where they're making life altering decisions about their physical body. And that is what we're fighting against. We are running right now, we've qualified a parents' rights initiative to give parents more access to the information and to have a say with what's going on with their children. And then, of course, we're going to do something else quite logical, which is prohibit biologically born males from participating in girls' sports, because that's just common sense.
Yes, 100%. I'm going to upload. I was a friend, Sarah Garriott, had just sent me some of the images, and because I'm going to post about that later today about the success, the
Mhm.
huge effort, and I wanted you to talk about that a little bit. What happened in Washington State, and how I think that can inspire folks everywhere, because
Mhm.
we often hear like, oh, I'm in a blue state, I'm in a purple state.
Mhm.
Well, in Washington State, what are the dynamics of your local? You've got a Democrat governor. What about in your House or your Senate, in the state capital?
So Washington is very similar, I think, to a lot of states where rural communities are still, very red, right? We've all seen the maps after presidential elections, and there's a
Yeah.
lot of red and there's tiny blues, although, of course, those blues represent some highly populous cities.
Mhm.
So there's a lot of red. And then as you move closer to those larger population centers like Seattle, Tacoma, or Olympia, our state capital, it becomes much more heavily Democratic. But what we do have, a all Democrat statewide offices are held by Democrats. We have a Democrat-led Senate and House, and really strong majority. So they have that long ago. I think a couple of years ago they even voted away debate. So there's not even debate on the floor of our House and Senate, State House and Senate. So they most recently are right now trying to attack our initiative process, which is something that came because of our success. So there's an organization that I'm a part of that's called Let's Go Washington,
Yes.
started by a friend of mine named Brian Haywood, just a fantastic man who realized that, there's a lot of people on the left who put their time, energy, and money into creating chaos. And he made the decision that he was going to use his talents and some of his personal treasure to go ahead and be a catalyst for what we've created now, which is people volunteering in very organized fashion to gather enough signatures to qualify initiatives to either go straight to the ballot or to go to the state legislature. And so the ones that we actually just qualified, we're very happy, hot off the presses. We had success in over 800,000 signatures this time around, and we had over 1 million signatures gathered when we did our previous initiatives just the prior cycle. But these two are important because usually you see a lot of our initiatives have been focused on monetary things, taxes and things that are, causing lack of energy choice. And because we're going to live off solar and wind in Washington State, which is, of course, a whole nother topic and not possible. But the idea here is this is a lever that allows even folks who maybe will continue to vote Democrat in a blue state to at least tell their legislators, it's a bridge too far for me. And a perfect example is the parents' rights. and the Initiative to Protect Girls Sports, because even in heavily Democrat Washington state, the vast majority of voters believe that if you were born male, you should not be taking opportunities away from females. And there's a fairness factor that is common sense. People believe and understand that that's not fair. Listen, if you feel like you don't want to compete against men and you were born a male, there are other spaces for you, but it's not on the podium with a female.
Nope.
That's never going to be okay. And so we qualified these initiatives. And what will happen is that the state legislature has the opportunity, if they choose, to actually pass a bill, a law this year that exactly mirrors the wording of the initiative. And they've already, right out of the gate, before they started the legislative session, said, we're not even going to give them hearings. We're going to completely ignore this. And I say bring it, and that's fine. Because if they don't, it means that the initiatives will be on the ballot in November during our midterms. And I think that's a fantastic thing. And as a congressional candidate, I am very excited about the prospect of being able to run on this common sense issue and to align myself with, if you want someone who was willing long ago, before it was even popular, to start being vocal about these things, you are going to want to align yourself with me, knowing that I am willing to go ahead and talk about and speak up about things, not just during COVID, but when it's over-regulation on our ag, all of the things that are happening against our law enforcement and tax on law enforcement in the state of Washington and federally. And my dad's a retired law enforcement officer, so I have a very big heart. There's no daylight between me and law enforcement. But these are the issues, the kitchen table issues that we're really concerned about. What's happening to our kids? What's happening to my bank account? What's happening at my job? Are they making me call someone something that they're not? I've known this person for 30 years, and all of a sudden I'm supposed to pretend that this person is now magically turned into someone else. These are the things that people are saying. I'm a person who is a faithful person who believes in compassion and acceptance. Everyone is made in God's image, but you do not have to live a lie. And I think that's where a lot of people have finally said that this is too far. And our initiative process has been hugely successful because it's allowing people to pull the lever and say, this is too much for us. And I say that as hope, as you just indicated, because there are people who live in a blue state. Find out what your initiative process is. And this is a perfect example, because every state has it differently. It's a perfect example of unity. There are a lot of different shades of red, and we all know that in different communities. But no matter what your shade is, this is an opportunity for us to think that big tent. And I believe so wholeheartedly that it is exactly the coalition building that our President Trump did to win the White House and to put him back in a position to save our country. If he had not built coalitions, he would not be where we need him today. And by the grace of God, he is there right now. And we have a trajectory that we can change for our future, for our children and our grandchildren. But it's going to take all of us to figure out where those opportunities are to form coalitions. And in Washington state, we've done so. There's a coalition of Republicans with moderates. In fact, we've even got some folks who are part of organizations that are, gay or lesbian organizations that have come in to support these initiatives, because as parents themselves, they want to know what's happening in their child's classroom. They understand that it can go both ways. You have the right to parent your child. You have the right to tell them, the things that your faith and what you believe in, and to know that it's age appropriate, and to know that there isn't someone who's undermining you as a parent. Those are basic tenets that parents of all stripes and polka dots understand. And even with the female sports, it's just something that you cannot actually look at the podiums when you see them and not feel just a bit of shame for where we've allowed this to get to, because we shouldn't have allowed this. And it's one thing to look at the young women on the podium standing next to these men, but I always like looking in the audience.
Yes.
Because who's watching? It's the younger brother or the younger sister who idolizes their older sibling and has seen them sacrifice, and looks at the tears streaming down the face of their parents and other adults, and seeing adults accept a lie and not do anything, and the confusion that that causes for our children. And that's for me where this is a hard line. We need to restore the faith that we understand right and wrong, and we can provide order, as you said, and not order at the sake of giving up our liberties. We are obviously, Republicans, and our platform are very, very much rooted in the tenet of liberty. And that's why we have so much dissent, where on the Democratic side, you don't see that as much.
Yeah.
But it really is important that we show our children we absolutely know the truth.
Yes. And there's always the Chesterton's fence. Sometimes there's a fence put up to protect and also to prevent something. You never know. You can't take things down just for the sake of taking them down. That's not an act of liberty to do that. That sometimes we have fences up to protect the people we care about, the things that we love, and this revolutionary impulse to just tear things down. Oh, that's something standing in the way. And what we're doing by changing the definition of biological sex to include 137 so-called gender identities is just, to me, insanity. And it's chaos, and it's harmful. It's harmful more than anything to the children that believe this lie, because they are changing the makeup, the biological makeup of their bodies in a way that's irreversible. And then when they experience regret, we as a lot of conservative organizations and adjacent try to give them a soft place to fall and to be there. But I tell you, we stand alone. There aren't many organizations on the far left. They are abandoned. Once they do not identify as transgender, once they say, I'm comfortable in what they would say my sexed body, like I know now that I am a girl, I am not a boy, or a boy says I am a boy and I'm not a girl, they are abandoned by the people that love them. And who is there to pick up those pieces? And that's what we're trying to build the airplane as we're flying, and create these organizations and institutions to help these kids, because there are many in the wake. I just went on Reddit to do some research, go to a D-Trans Reddit, and I'm talking just thousands and thousands of kids saying, I'm detransitioning. Everyone I know is detransitioning. What does this mean? And I think a lot of them, they've woken up. Unfortunately, it's still so pervasive in schools that I wish we could say that I know, like some like to say, oh, woke is dead, we've won. No, we have not. I can tell you that, because if in deep red Florida with the wonderful Governor DeSantis, you still have teachers unions, and you still have radical left trying to reclaim schools and trying to insert at every possible chance, policies that undermine parental rights. We've not won. Like their infiltration is too deep, and that's why we need people like you to run and to fight for team sanity and for biological sanity. But going back,
bringing common sense and being able to talk with them in a way too about, one of the things that I like to say is, I'm also a process person, and this is where the policy, comes in. You hear these terms thrown on, like gender fluidity. And I say, okay, but practically, how does that work? Because once you say it's fluid, how fluid? So are we going to get in a point where someone shows up at a track meet and they're in 3 different events, and they get to be so fluid that they change what sex they are and identify as from event to event, meet to meet, one day or the other? Imagine a world where it's so fluid that, you get to change from day to day or hour to hour. And I say that to expose how ludicrous the idea actually is, and that's what we're supposed to expect. But how can anyone live in a world where you cannot know with certainty who is going to show up? Is it going to be Bob or Jane today? And your role and responsibility in a society that embraces this is that whatever they present, you're supposed to promote that. And there's a difference between passivity and action. And I think this is where we're bold. We need to be more bold, because no one wants to be told that they're discriminating against someone.
Mhm.
But discrimination is an activity. And simply acknowledging someone's there and being polite, but not promoting it. And the way that we're headed right now is that if you're not actively promoting someone's choices, that is called discrimination. But passivity cannot be activity. And I think this is where we need to be very bold and say, I can accept you for who you are, but I don't have to agree with it. And I don't have to tell you or anyone else that I agree with it either.
So I can tell you how far it goes, because I was interviewing Alexa Anderson, and in Oregon, in her high school, a biological boy could run male cross country in the fall.
Yes.
And then in the spring, be on a female swim team.
Yes, of course.
That's how. The only rule was that boy could not play two sports in the same semester and be a male in one and a female in another. But the next semester, he can identify as a female and participate in female athletics.
But as soon as you accept that as reality, watch then someone very near in the future is going, well, that's not fair for this person. It's not fair. So because once you say something is fluid,
Yes. There's no limiting principles. And that's, again, the problem where we get to Chesterton's fence. When you don't have limiting principles, that's chaos, insanity, destabilization beyond measure. And anyone who's raised children knows that children require structure.
They want it. They crave it.
They don't do well in chaos. They don't do well in situations where they don't know what the rules are. You are setting them up to failure and I think for mental illness. And
that is why we have so many of our youth self-reporting as having depression, anxiety, and other mental health issues. And it is absolutely, they got the double whammy. They got COVID, and then all of this, trans ideology pushed upon them right at the same time. But I will say, thank God for, Charlie Clerk and him, creating such an incredible organization he was so ahead of his time to be able to recognize what was happening with our youth. And certainly, when he started Turning Point, he didn't foretell how far crazy we were going to get on this spectrum of social issues. But talk about meeting the moment and what he has done for changing himself, the trajectory of our country. I do believe that he will absolutely go on and live on as one of the most consequential, pivotal people in our American history because of the awakening of the youth and letting them be able to say, no, we're participating. And we've seen this, we saw this in the 60s, but when you energize the youth, and certainly we saw the activation of the youth vote, but he was also very clear, it's our responsibility to still meet them. We can't just say we've got them converted. No. They still want to see that there are reasons to be hopeful about America and the American dream. And our role and responsibility is to continue to meet them where they are and show them that, yes, this is something that is worth fighting for and believing in. This is God's country, but you have to be a part of it rather than fall into the despair and the chaos again, because right now that's where society's trying to push them.
Charlie Kirk said, I once reposted his quote with the image of our former HHS secretary. And I'd like to forget, but he was right when he said, first you have to tolerate it. Okay, you tolerate it.
Yes.
And then you have to, and where a lot of us were like, oh yes, of course, like tolerance, but that doesn't mean, no, then you have to acceptance. And then you're kind of feeling a little more uncomfortable. Okay, I'm accepting this, I guess, because I want to be nice. I don't want to be mean. Then you have to celebrate it. Then it's you just, you can't just tolerate. You have to celebrate. And then finally you have to participate. the demand
Yes.
that children participate. And he was 100% right that
Yes.
you had to, he and I, we had our last conversation I was on his show, and we talked about a 200-pound biological boy in Wisconsin who was allowed to leer at young girls in the bathroom because he identified as a woman, and he did. I don't want to talk about the things that he did while he was watching about them, but you can imagine.
I'll try not to.
It was a big, and Charlie had said this is probably one of the worst stories he's ever heard. And so I was on with him for 2 segments talking about this. And he said, like, this is where adults have failed these girls, and where he once used to think, okay, let's have some accommodations. He was once for accommodations, but then when he realized what was happening, and it's what I realized what was happening, that the bathroom that was supposed to be the accommodation, that's where all the girls had to run and hide and crowd and try and change because the boy had taken their entire space. So you may try to do all of these things, but in the end, you have to recognize that some of those on the far left, they won't stop till you're celebrating. And that's why if you just have common sense, I think you can get to the moderate voter. You can get to Democrats and say, it's common sense. You don't want a man in a female prison. That's not right. That's not just. That's not moral. You don't want a man in female bathrooms, and you don't want a man playing with or against your daughter when she is participating in athletics that they've worked so hard for. It means so much to them. Like Jennifer says, they don't play for fun. They play to win. They play to compete. And this isn't just a game. That was actually a slogan when I was in DC at the rally at the Supreme Court.
Beautiful weather too.
Yes, it was beautiful weather. It was a beautiful day. It was so amazing. And there were groups, there were Democrat women holding signs that were supporting us. There were some of they consider themselves radical feminists who fought for Title IX in 1972 that were standing with us. There were LGBT groups that were standing with us. So we had a diverse coalition where they had, it's hard to describe some of the scenes that I saw what they had. Because this is common sense. And I think that I'm really happy to see what you were able to do in Washington State, because it's having done this at a local level. We recalled 4 school board members.
Yes.
Getting those signatures was no easy task. I had 12-hour days. I was in my minivan. I was like pulling up to libraries, going to state fairs. We were doing everything we could. It's no easy task, but it felt
sure. It increases your conviction, doesn't it? When you're right. In teaching, we learn. Well, I will tell you, we know we're successful because right now we actually have had 2 bills introduced trying to make the signature gathering for our initiatives more difficult. They're wanting to impose a $5,000 fine and up to 364 days in jail if you cannot prove the chain of custody of the little sheet that you were in charge of, which of course is absolutely meant to intimidate the average voter. And what's interesting though, again, common sense, very, very proud to say that during the testimony, our current Secretary of State, who was previous to becoming Secretary of State, a Democrat state representative, and then the former Secretary of State, who was a Republican, got up there and told the bill sponsor, who was chair of this committee, this is only meant to intimidate the voters in Washington from exercising the one last way that a minority voice is able to come and bring legislation to the table. Because absent of, they have a super majority of all the state houses and statewide offices. And, our founding fathers revered the minority voice.
Yes.
That was why we were given such beautiful, they designed our process. And of course, we've expanded on it. And, this is a way for us again to truly grassroots say, as a community, you as legislators may not think this is a big enough issue, but we're here to tell you that it is. And I'll keep you updated and let you know. Obviously, I can tell you this. I have pretty high confidence that if for any reason they make the initiative process more difficult, that we will probably be answering with an initiative to repeal it, because this is again across all spectrums, political spectrums. People don't like the intent to squash voices. They really do. At their core, we understand that that is a core principle, which is the freedom of speech. And the initiative process is a manifestation of that. It is a way to have your freedom of speech heard, to be able to tell your government you're unhappy with something. And it really is the only tool, absent of removing people from office when they're up for reelection, which of course, again, if you're in the minority, that's very hard and unlikely to happen.
If they did something like that, I would venture to say that you would have attorneys lining up to take that case, including folks that are not conservative at all. I believe that there would be those who would call themselves Democrats, because even Trump during the whole process, he had Jonathan Turley. There were people that were like, listen, I'm not even voting for him, but I'm standing up for the constitutional process. And this is not the way our judicial system is meant to work.
Imagine what the public would have thought about that if you didn't have Turley, or if you didn't have some of these other stronger voices, who, as you say, who were typically maybe on the opposite side of the political spectrum. Alan Dershowitz. I mean, he was on there a lot, right? And not someone who came across or was ever a particularly, Republican-based core conservative. But imagine where we would be and where President Trump would be now if it weren't for those people who were willing, despite their political alignment, to say something about what was happening in the weaponization. And I will say, that's actually one of the primary focuses of my congressional campaign, is the weaponization of our state and federal governments against the average person. President Trump has endured, but he had the resources to be able to push back and fight. But if you're someone with the full force of the government coming down you, and it's between losing your family farm and complying with something, even though you know that it isn't legal, what they're asking you to do, that's when most people give up, and they either comply at their own expense or they sell. And that's one of the reasons why we have such a significant loss in farming and ranching across the United States, which, quite frankly, food security is national security. And we should all be very concerned that our federal government and state governments are making it. There is no way at this point that you can farm and ranch without fear every day that there's going to be some law that you somehow broke that has been brought to your attention, and you have nothing to do. It's a huge fight for it. And people say, well, why do I want to do it anymore? And we're losing that hope and optimism. Yeah. And I think especially in the American West, when the American West starts to move away from all of those things that make us rugged and raw and beautiful, that is a very deep concern for everyone, no matter where you are in America. If the West falls, that is a troublesome thought.
Yes. So we're talking about the culture wars, but you're running for Congress in Washington State. What are some of the big issues? Because I would say the ordinary man, what are the things that they are dealing with that I think the mainstream media, they overlook? They're not really talking to people. And I think that a lot of those that would oppose President Trump and oppose conservatives and sort of more the more traditional, the person with the more traditional view of government and of family, they just sort of, call you a bigot or a racist, and they're on their way. And because we actually care about the common everyday man, but they really don't. What are some of the issues that aren't talked about as much that you see people dealing with, that they're struggling with?
You know, it's this acknowledgement that government has become so top down. And I'm not even talking about just the whole, deep state bureaucracy. There has been such a consolidation of decision making, and it's true no matter what state you're in, as far as if it's red or blue. I serve with commissioners and supervisors across the United States, and I'm vice chair of the National Association of Counties Rural and Agriculture Affairs Committee, and I sit on the Western Interstate Region Board. So I am meeting routinely with commissioners who are hearing from their constituents constantly that even in red states, there is no local decision making anymore. And to put this in context for you, no matter where you are in America, if you want to put a garage, an extra bedroom, you want to build a house, you need to put up an extra barn, anything that you want to do, you need to go down to your county courthouse and you need to apply for a building permit. And what you might find out is that, well, someone else who previously owned your property did something without a permit, and now we're aware of it. And now we're required to make you bring it at your expense into, conformity with current code if you want to do anything else. And you need to also go to the health department, and you've got to talk to the State Department of Health and Ecology. You've got to get environmental reviews. You need to have your soil tested. And all of a sudden, your little, garage that you were going to put up is $60,000, 2 years in, and a lot of headache.
Yeah.
And you're talking to the person you went to high school with who's telling you this wonderful news, and you say to this person, why? Why is it, Sherry, that I have to go through all these things? And Sherry has to throw her hands up and say, I'm so sorry. It's because of all the laws that have come down from our state, and overruling from the federal government. Justice Gorsuch has a very simple but wonderful book on this, Overruled. And it really states very plainly that we've just stacked on all these rules. And so it's this sense that you can live in a red community and you are still bogged down by the power of government. That's the point. And so for me, I've had very large success working within the National Association of Counties policy, which is what guides what we advocate for in Congress. Again, building coalitions, which was one of the things that we're targeted with in Central Washington, is rural communities having our agricultural land converted to large solar and wind projects. And it's very troubling for many reasons. It's a tax burden shift on our taxpayers, and it's a natural resource issue, among others. But I was able to present to commissioners from across the country that we should be advocating for local decisions, because again, even blue states and red states were dictating to their blue and red county commissioners and cities, you're going to do it this way. Whether you like it or not, this is where this is going to go, and overruling what people on the ground wanted to have their community look like. And I'm not talking about, well, we'll just give you a vote in a meeting. Completely eliminated. And I had success in simply saying to some of my Democrat partners on the other side, don't you, at the end of the day, you may want these big giant things in your backyard, or you may think they're wonderful, but at the end of the day, you want local control. So do you think that it's fair that you're forcing upon rural commissioners to not have a say at the local level about these decisions? Because I'm advocating not just for me to have a choice, I'm advocating for you to have a choice. And I was able to get the policies changed for that reason. And that's just being very pragmatic, right? And being able to understand what people's motivations are, what is their desired outcome, what is their preconceived outcome, and what are they not knowing is going to be an unintended consequence that they will themselves feel down the road. And I can highlight that for them and have them go, okay, I understand. And it's still preserving their right to have exactly their backyard look the way they want it to, but not forcing it on someone 2,000 miles away.
Yeah, I mean, I just think regular people, when you just talk to regular people, because most people are not very political. I mean, they're just not. They are not viewing the world through the lens of, they may vote a certain way, and lots of times that has to do with
Or they're not voting.
or they're not
And
voting. They're just not
that
voting
is
at all, because
the voting is so low, and it's terrible. And I think it really is at the root of what we're talking about, which is this sense of my vote doesn't really matter
yep,
anymore anyway.
yep, no one's listening to me. What doesn't matter what I say, my opinion isn't going to matter. They're just not. But that it's so important. I mean, local control, not just the states' rights, but people having the voice and feeling like that they're heard, and that these rules aren't disseminated from people that don't understand. They don't understand the area. They don't understand the economy, the culture. I kept thinking as you were talking of a scene.
Did you try to build something and apply for a permit?
No, I was thinking of that scene from Landman that's hilarious, where he's with the young pretty lawyer who and all the windmills, and she's like, oh, green energy. He's like, there's nothing green about this energy. And he kind of just lays out the facts of, don't, whatever you do, don't try and convince yourself that you're morally superior. It may be necessary, but there's nothing green about what we're doing here. Like, and you can have your ideas about oil, or you can have your ideas about the way you would like the world to be based on your Ivy Tower.
What you've been fed.
This is how it should be. Like, oh, I have this like beautiful idea, but then there's the way the world really works. And especially when it comes to natural resources and land, farming, all those things, like it can be subject to just so many forces out of your control, that the real experts are the people that live there, that have
They will always be. They will
Yeah.
always be the people on the ground.
Mhm.
And that is absolutely, one of my core goals. It's been what I've been advocating for as county commissioner, not only representing my county, but Washington state counties, and then rural communities and counties across the nation, is exactly that, which is that I'm not interested in going to Congress to add to the over, 300,000 federal laws and rules. Uh, I am actually there because I want to see us start dissolving this bureaucracy in a way that actually defers local decision making. And we already have the framework for it. Another piece that I had go through our National Association of Counties was just a resolution saying all counties are calling on Congress to really require the federal agencies to follow the American Procedures Act, the APA. We have these things, which, by the way, I would really love to see that amended even further, because it's been several decades since it's been looked at. And the idea, though, is that we have mechanisms, but like so many things, people didn't show up to a meeting. They can't get a quorum. All of a sudden, you start to have proxy votes, and the next thing you know, oh, well, that county doesn't show up very much, so maybe we don't need to have county voices, or we don't need to have city voices, or we don't need to hear from the irrigators. And it's because the people, like we're talking about, are so busy running their lives. And so we've just eliminated them completely from the conversation when decisions are made. And I think that is where the rebirth of our nation needs to come from. It must come from people understanding that you're going to have to start showing up to meetings that are boring, and they're, in the middle of the day, and you might have to work your schedule around there to do it, or it might be at night. It's going to be on a weekend. Look at your planning commission, be a part of your planning commission, be a part of your noxious weed district and your irrigation district. There are so many small special taxing districts. And I know there's been a lot of focus on school districts and school boards for all the right reasons. But there are other very, very impactful. If you did nothing else right now upon listening to this, but you went and Googled what boards and committees have vacancies in your county and in your town, you will see why we're having a problem, because there's vacancies, and the people who are showing up might not necessarily be telling someone like me as a commissioner, yes, we as a planning commission, we are members of the community. We believe, commissioners, that you should make this land use decision, and we have to rely on, in part, what they're saying. And if that is a room full of people that don't think the way you do, then you better do your darndest to get on that committee. And it isn't just school boards, folks. It really is. There are so many integral, vital pieces to how your local government works, and your electeds are desperate for you to participate. We
Yes.
really are.
Yes, if you've gone to a county board meeting, a county executive board meeting, there's even library committee meetings, like they can't find people they have to just appoint, because people don't even run, and no one shows up. To most, when I'm at a meeting, they used to have them by Zoom during COVID. Now you have to, which I like, that you have to be there, but they're deciding ordinances and a lot of things, and you won't right now. You may not care, but when the next disaster happens or the next crisis, these rules are all going to be in place, and you're going to have to operate under them. Or like you said, when you need to pull a permit, when you decide that you want to do something to your home, or when you want to own your own business or buy a building or get involved in a whole bunch of other things, suddenly you're going to be very shocked. And my husband is in commercial real estate development business, and that's pretty, like, he is always attending these small meetings, and he's
They're
like
2-year-long environmental reviews, and then yeah, it's
oh yes. He's like, there'll be and he said sometimes there's just one person that shows up and says, I don't like this, and one person can make a difference, what good or bad. But
yeah.
Yeah, these are the meetings that he attends that decide whether the permits for the restaurants, are they going to how are you going to get an alcohol permit? And that could affect that. It has all these reverberations. So there's a lot of important things. Where an intersection is going to go in, where are they going to bring in, if you love your nice rural community and suddenly they want to bring in low income mass housing, and you don't show up to those meetings.
Those are exactly the statewide planning that happens, because instead of addressing the housing affordability crisis by the root cause, which is because of environmental regulations, energy efficiency regulations, high labor costs. We're looking right now in Washington State. They're looking at trying to unionize farm labor. So just think of what that will do to food prices in the United States, because as again I said, we are an agriculture economy. We have over 300 commodities in Washington, but Central Washington has billions of dollars of, we provide feed for hay, alfalfa, straw, apples, cherries, wine grapes, hops for beer, mint for your toothpaste, dairy, beef, all of these things. And imagine if you can have unionized farm labor that can strike when those precious sweet cherries have got to come off, right? And because they can't just sit there, and you're looking at billions of dollars in crop losses for all of these different, and we're even looking at having a 32-hour work week has been proposed, that you are eligible for overtime and benefits over 32 hours. And so it's this rising cost of labor, and anyone who looks at that in business, again, saying, well, that's untenable. I mean, you are right now, because of minimum wage and all of the benefits you're supposed to provide to people. When we were growing up, your minimum wage job was your entry level. You're 16 years old. I worked at Dairy Queen. It wasn't supposed to be a job I was going to raise a family on, for goodness sakes. And now we have this mentality that no matter what you provide as a service, that your service and your work is exactly commensurate to the service and skill set of someone who's designing a skyscraper. And that's just not true.
No, and it doesn't.
Equality is not equal outcome, right?
No.
If you have an education and a skill set that allows you to provide a very valuable service, that is why you are paid and compensated more. But if you are at a basic skill set level, that's why you have a lower, your input to the value of the economy is much lower. But here's the fun part about America. You have the freedom to learn and educate and work hard and get to the point where, if you're like me, I bartended so that I wouldn't have a huge student loan bill. And when I was able to go into banking, I understood finance, and all of that is because I realized that I wasn't going to be able to afford my own apartment. I actually needed to rent a room.
Yeah.
And imagine that today. We have this idea that everyone, should have a white picket fence, and this little slice of heaven right out of the gate. And we bypass this because it's an instant self gratification. I deserve this because of who I am. And I think that also by not working and having to sacrifice personally for some things and be a little uncomfortable. I mean, we all joke about eating top ramen in college, but the reality is that college students right now are ordering DoorDash.
Yes.
Right? It's a lot different. I mean, I remember pooling money together so we could get a pizza delivered.
And
so
they're getting there, and that's the problem with even with the student loan crisis, is that you want to go into education and you're taking out $100,000, $80,000 a year in debt, going to a boutique college out of your state. No, if you stay in-state tuition, and that's what we've said to our kids. If you're going to get your schooling out of state and it's going to cost more, then you have to look for scholarships. You're going to have to get a job, and you're going to have a really good reason that school has some unique, something unique to offer that you're going to go out of state. And the way that what I saw with my kids, starting with my oldest son, college counselors are just like, oh, look at this cute college. And I'm like, where is that? In the middle, it's back then, 2017, $80,000 a year for I've never heard of. And that there's a lot not included in there. And they're like, well, don't worry, because he can get these subsidized loans.
Mhm.
And, I feel like it's like market
Well,
up.
and they're borrowing, they're encouraged to borrow more, not
Yes.
just for the tuition, right? So
To live.
they're living versus, having a job, even a part-time job, which I have always found that, I worked while I was in school, and it made me better
Yes.
at time management. Right. And it certainly kept me, from probably going out and wasting more money doing things. I wasn't able to go off and go to concerts and do these things because I was working on Saturday night. But it provides you this level of focus, and it makes you hungry, and it gives you drive. And I absolutely credit my dad for instilling in me the drive that I have now to serve, which is because at the end of the day, I am driven to be extremely effective.
Yes.
I like efficiency. I like effectiveness. I like to have as many positive outcomes as possible for the time that I invest in it, and that drive and determination is what I think that we could really do more for our elected leaders, not just in Congress, across the spectrum. But finding people who are hungry to produce things is very hard now. And so I think that's the thing is, for people who are supporting my run, they have seen me as someone who is hungry to produce things that benefit the community, and come along with me. Let's produce this benefit to the community together, whether that's through volunteerism, through business, and now in public service. So if you are looking at candidates in your area, look for someone who really comes across, who's driving to produce some things and wants you to be a part of it.
And who wants to solve problems,
Mhm.
solve if a low income, solve that problem. What's not do the let's rob Peter to pay Paul and throw money, and knowing that problem's only getting exacerbated. The more government gets its hands into things, the more money the government, the worse things get, the higher prices go. That for people to like, you've got that finance fund, and I was raised luckily by my dad, who was a Marine, but he explained these things to me, and I was the first generation to go to college, actually the first to graduate high school.
Mhm.
And so education was prioritized, but education wasn't I wasn't sold to me from my parents as an experience. It wasn't supposed to be so I could, live my best life. It was, I had to work 3 jobs. You get your education so that you can live your best life when you're in your 30s, 40s and have children and not have to struggle the way we did. And that's what we're doing a disservice to our children if we treat all these stages as you're just supposed to we want them to have fun, but that's not the goal.
Well, and we've got a college age daughter who's just graduated, and I will say it's we're very proud of her, but it is going through what is now a cultural shift, which is that college has become more or is billed more of as an experience. And I do think that is something that and I just want anyone listening to know. I mean, we're there. We've been through it. We understand. We've got young children too. And yes, you have your certain value sets, and you have what you hope for your children. And at the end of the day, they have free will, and once they turn 18, they make decisions. And while they may not have picked the school that you wanted them to pick, it's you do want to have them live their life, but I think it really is a cultural thing that has been shifted, that my parents didn't have to fight with that, because at least it was still, when I was choosing to go to college, it was still very much, oh, you're going there for an education. That was the primary focus, and now it's shifted more towards this experience, and not everyone views it that way.
No, and I think that it's actually changed. I think the kids, because it's very different now with my 16-year-old and my 19-year-old, maybe it was COVID, maybe just kind of the shifts, the turning, the decadence, then the next generation's just different. But my kids are they're looking at everything like, I'm not going into a debt. Where do I get a scholarship? This is what I want. How am I going to get there? I want to be in college a limited amount of time. What do I want?
You're right. Our son they're 9 years apart, and you're right. It is what his idea is completely different than what hers was 9 years previously. And you're right. Because there's now, especially because of COVID, we as parents have been talking more with our kids and with other adults and our parents, their grandparents, about these issues. And I know that our son has picked up on that. Absolutely. We talk about it. And yes, his idea of what his future looks like after high school is not that, oh, I'm going to college. He's got ideas and dreams of what he wants to do, and he definitely wants to keep learning, but it's definitely more of the learning aspect.
And maybe it's AI too, and that's something you'll be dealing with, I think, in Congress.
Yes.
It's a different world. 9 years ago, what was AI? No one knew. Now our kids know what it is, and I think even if they're teenagers, they're thinking, what am I going to do that is different, that can't be done by AI? So trying to navigate the reality, what's happening.
Well, and understanding, I think they know that it's going to be harder for them to discern what reality is.
That's a good point.
It's which really speaks to what we started at the beginning of the conversation, which is, well, what is real? What is truth? And now, out of all of this tumultuousness that we've experienced as a country, and really now globally, we're looking at AI, and it is something that is going to, like anything, there will be positives and there are going to be negatives. We could say that about almost every advancement. Some things become better and more efficient. I do hold a lot of hope, because I think, yes, you saw, the automobile push out, wagon makers, but they found something else to do, different skills to provide. And, we've always had, I mean, who remembers Blockbuster, right? I mean,
it was fun. I miss Blockbuster days.
Which, by the way, how funny is it to try to explain to your kids?
I know. There was a horse and buggy around. So I was like, we used to rent movies, and it was an experience with your family. Let's go find a movie and see if it's in.
But isn't it also curious, I think, our human nature is to be together, because even with the advancements, and certainly more people definitely do live streaming at home, but we still have movie theaters.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
we still want to congregate, right? And it's that idea that you still want to go to a theater, whether or not it's a digital movie, or it might be, a performance, a ballet performance of your little kiddo. There's still that idea. We still very much crave being around other humans.
Mhm.
And that's why I do have that hope that we're going to be able to figure this out, because we don't want to lose our humanity.
Yes, I think that we will. I think that we will. I think that there's benefits of AI, but I think that that's why you have to, especially with the government, has to make sure it's protecting privacy, protecting us from there's going to be big corporations that are going to want to do what they want to do, and they want to just advance, and sometimes I don't like Jeff
Well,
Gold.
the little one can't, the little guy, the single person cannot get lost. And for me, I will tell you, this is my number one concern. Is I think of it in the sense of, we've had a lot of changes in regulations to protect consumers over the years, with credit. Your credit score, is obviously your window to the world. If you have good credit, you have the ability to borrow at a lower rate, be able to have purchase power that you wouldn't otherwise, and gain in generational wealth by the purchase of real estate, for example. That's the primary way that Americans have grown in wealth, is through real estate, from homeownership. If you had some business, incorrectly, let's say, report something on your credit report, it was daunting, even for someone to really, well, how do I get it removed? There's all these different credit reporting agencies. What kind of proof? I can't get the dentist won't even call me back. And then they tell me, oh, we made a mistake, but they don't want to fix it. But it's impacting someone's ability to actually, let's say, purchase a home, right? Or rent an apartment, or buy a vehicle. And they're held hostage by the system that for a while made it very difficult for someone to dispute something and have it corrected quickly. And I look at AI in that same way, that I see that if someone creates a photo of you, or alters documents and presents that to the public, and you are applying for a job, and the employer does a check, and there is something that pops up that makes you not desirable to be hired, you might not even know that it's there, number one, or you're told about it. And then what are the steps for you as
Yeah.
a consumer, as a citizen of the United States, to fix this error? That's not real. I need to fix that. It's impacting my life today. I can't buy a car, can't get a job. My spouse is thinking something, is terrible has happened. I'm losing relationships over this. Those are very rare and very real implications. And that is where I think it's important to say, I'm looking more from the personhood aspect of it. How is it going to impact people as an individual, and make sure that every individual has a very clear line on being able to say whatever is out there in the world, in the ether about me, it's either real or it's not. And I have a quick and easy way that I understand to correct the record.
Yes, yes, that is going to be a very important thing. I was just talking with someone who had their image and likeness put on Rumble and YouTube with content like that was not them. And
Yes.
it took a lot of effort, lawyers, to get rid of it. So it's going to be a big issue, one of many, but I think, it's just one of those things that we'll need government to be involved with, but at the same time, we don't, in the right way, not to be intrusive. Before we end, I want to talk about some things that are important for, I know, Moms for Liberty members and our listeners, and really to talk about parental notification, curriculum transparency, local control, restoring common sense in our schools. That continues to be something that we still have to fight for locally,
Yes.
primarily. But there are some things in Congress, there are some bills that can help. Like in Congress is going to have to deal with Title IX, I think,
Yes.
ultimately. So what are some things that that you, in your experience in Washington State, what can parents do about those issues?
So the number one thing is to support your legislators who, even though they might be in the minority voice, to make sure that we are showing up and providing testimony. We've gotten very savvy with being able to show visual graphics where we show how many people have at least sign on pro or con on a bill. It might not make a difference whether or not this supermajority Democrat legislature will pass a bad bill or not, but it does signal to the community as a whole where did they act where there was clear agreement and consensus that that was not actually the will of the people. And then it allows us as a community to come together and figure, okay, how is this a priority for us to work towards unraveling?
Mhm.
And those are the ones that I think, as we become even better and more efficient with the initiative process, which is of course why they're trying to attack it, is that we're going to have an initiative process in Washington State that will be so efficient that we will be able to drive down the time and cost to gather the signatures. And so we're envisioning that we'll be able to have multiple initiatives every year. As soon as they close their session, they're going to be answering for the bills where they ignored the consensus of the people. So I think that's really critical. So finding a way to make sure you weigh in. I think that, we all are guilty probably at night of, looking and scrolling, right?
Mhm.
Maybe just take the time to look at, go to the state legislature's website and look at the bill summaries, because our legislation session the state session is right now, and look for bills that just look at what their summary is. And then you can actually so easily click on it and say, I'm just adding my name. You're not signing up to testify. You're just adding my name as for or against this. And then we get these great pie graphs. And then it allows us, when we're testifying, those of us who are able to go take the time to testify can say, 12,000 people have said that we don't want you, Governor, to be able to appoint a board who can remove our duly elected sheriff. We
Yep.
don't like that idea. And 200 people said yes. And by the way, it's no one who likes law enforcement. So those are the things that allow us to know when we're on target about the things that we're wanting to work to repeal. And then the other thing I already mentioned, which is that it isn't just school boards. There are boards and committees all across your county that we need you to be there, because we have vacancies, and every bit of the planning that goes into those meetings. And they're not flashy, they're noxious weed, they're pest control, they're, conservation districts, and all of these things that we have within our local government. And actually, why are they there? They were there because we actually knew we wanted so much local control that we wanted our neighbors in charge of our weeds. We wanted neighbors in charge of mosquitoes and bugs. We wanted neighbors in charge of dust abatement and roads. We wanted neighbors in charge of where we can have our cattle graze in unrestricted areas, deciding those borders. Think of all the things that our founders and the people who came to populate these areas, especially in the West, they knew that it was better for their neighbor who had cattle to decide where the cattle should go
Mhm.
versus Olympia or whatever state capital where you live. And so just absolutely go and be on a committee and a board for something that just sounds really unfamiliar to you. But I guarantee you there's a vacancy there, and you will learn so much. And it's an easy way to get engaged. And quite simply, America needs more citizens engaged.
Yes, we need more citizen engagement. And I think there was a lot, and now with COVID, I think people forgetting, and just like forgetting how bad it was, it's slipped back into apathy, and we've got to just continually just get involved at the local level. Join your local party, join your local school, or go to the school board meetings.
Yeah.
Go to the meetings. And I think if you go enough, you'll start to think, I could do that. Maybe I want to get involved. Or it's not as, once you really get to know what's going on, it's not as boring. It can seem that way, but when
Yeah.
you could get excited about an issue and then and see you can make a difference. And I think then people stick with it. And I think especially
And put a
conservatives.
time limit. You know, you say, listen, I'm going to go and I'm going to volunteer my time on this. I want to go look into it. And maybe I'm only going to do this one for 1 year.
Yeah.
And then you can move on. You know,
I think it's better to not have these, like sometimes people stay forever. I think it's good to do something
Yeah.
temporarily and move on to something else.
Yeah. And it's
Like,
okay to attend and not say anything for a while. You know,
yeah.
I think that the thought might be intimidating for a lot of folks. And so if all you do is just go to listen, that's good too, because having ears in the room to listen is very important too.
Well, this has been a great conversation. I didn't think we would talk this long. There's probably so much more we could, but we'll definitely have you come back.
I would love it.
So if someone wants to support your effort, regardless of where they live, where can they learn more about you and donate to your campaign?
Yes, if you want to have a local commissioner in Congress who understands the plight of living in rural communities and really anywhere, I understand the heavy hand of government, and that's exactly what I'm trying to unravel. You can go to my website. It's McKinney for Washington, and for is spelled out FOR. So McKinney for Washington. I would love to have your support. I'm very, very proud to have received the endorsement from President Trump. As well as
Oh,
Turning Point Action. And I've also received the endorsement of Speaker Mike Johnson and Winning for Women. So on a roll, right out of the gate, really hungry. And I guarantee you that when I get to Congress, there's going to be a sign on my door that says all counties welcome, because I really mean it. I want to see the federal government and state governments be forced to put local decision making back into the hands of local people.
I love that. I love that you had a leadership role at the county level and you really understand your community. And I think it's a real blessing to have that. So when you're there and they're talking about statutory law and the regulations and the policy that they're going to force onto rural communities, that you really understand and you can explain to those who don't. To someone, if they're from Milwaukee, Wisconsin, and they don't, you could say, oh, hey, whether they're Republican or Democrat, here's the unintended consequences of what you're going to do, and you're not going to like it. You're not going to achieve the end you think you're going to. And that's where bipartisanship is good.
Looking at it from I understand and know that most cities and counties don't have software that's provided to them for any of the mandates that they're supposed to perform on behalf of their state. I understand that a lot of rural counties are still having part-time sheriffs and part-time clerks, and they are still doing paper applications to do a building permit. Those are the realities of rural America right now. And we can have all of these laws and rules, but when there isn't an easy system, and one, by the way, that's provided to rural communities because they don't have money in their general fund to go spend $1 million on some kind of software that's going to allow them to implement the new building code laws that the state and federal government have decided to impose upon them. So I understand the lack of ability for operations to be efficient and effective for the people on the ground. They're grand ideas from above, but implementing them is not something that local communities have been able to do successfully. And I know that because wherever you are right now listening to that, your number one complaint is your interaction with your city and county government, knowing that it has nothing to do with the decision that they made or have any control over.
Yep, 100%. So that's a great message. Everything at the end is local. It is, and we want it to be because it's hard to petition the federal government. It's at least with a congressman, they have an office and they are around more. But then it gets harder as you go to senator, and then you get to the federal level. And it's a lot of work. You have to really band together to make a dent, to get noticed. That's why our founding fathers had the ingenious plan that we should have local government should be prioritized to the state and the federal. And we just become too top heavy, and we need to decentralize as much as
And it's a volume. So think of it this way. Our first representatives, when our country was formed, had about 34,000 citizens that they represented in Congress. As a county commissioner, I have nearly 300,000 people.
Wow.
So think of it volume wise. So if you don't feel like your voice is being heard, it's because your voice is one of so many more who are trying to knock on the door of these representatives. You can only have, I mean, think of it. They're getting emails and phone calls and text messages. They need to read the bill. It's a lot of information. That's why I always joke that, I work 25/7. I find that extra hour every day. But that is why it's so important. And that to me is the highlight. And it really pins the point to why I believe so strongly that federal government's role right now and my role in Congress is to be driving decisions back down, because even county commissioners and city council members are representing more people right now, likely, than the average congressional representative when our country was formed. And that is why we have to make decisions locally, because the giant cookie cutter from high above, it never worked. It wasn't for our core principles of our foundation, but it actually practically isn't working, and we've got to fix it.
Amen. Well, thank you. Thank you so much, Amanda, for coming on, and thank you for
having me.
Moms for Liberty, and you coming to our events, and
you guys are amazing. You gals.
guys, you guys. That's Western. So, you guys means girls and
right. It does.
Wisconsin.
Well, no, your work and all of your supporters. You are a joy to be around. Every time we are at an event together, I love knowing, and we really are. We band together, us moms.
Yes.
And we've had some powerful successes for our country, and I am very excited for all the successes that are going to come. More moms in Congress.
Yeah, I'm very excited to see that us moms that started to get involved at the local level, the most local level, that there's a whole bunch of us that haven't left that, and we're elevating, we're taking on different positions, and we're running for not just school board now, for state legislative offices, for those county commissioner offices, and then going to Congress, and next it's going to be Senate, and who knows from there. So, and it's great because there are so many women on the far left that feel this sense of duty to run and make change. And I'm delighted to see that there are more women that are more traditional and conservative that feel the same way. And I do think that there are many battles that only women, that we're the only ones that are going to be able to win these battles, because we were made for such a time as this, because they're men are they're in certain territories where men do not have the impact that we do, and we as moms and as wives, as daughters, as mothers, we're going to have to suit up, put on our armor, and we're gonna have to win. That was an amazing conversation with Amanda, and I wanted to play her endorsement at Turning Point USA AmFest, America Fest. That was December 19th. It's great. So let's bring this up and let's watch.
We'll find out. You're going to find out real soon. My name's Tyler Boyer. I'm the CEO of Turning Point Action. I have with me 4 individuals who are going to be some new faces here in Congress, because I think we need a lot of new faces in Congress. Wouldn't you agree? So we're going to go down the line real quick, introduce ourselves, where you're running real quick, and then we have some questions. We'll do some Q&A. I do want to throw this out. If you're watching at home or even in here, if you go to Turning Point USA's Rumble or on the Turning Point Action Rumble, you can actually input your questions. We're going to do some direct Q&A straight from the Rumble chat. So we appreciate our great sponsor, Rumble, for doing that. So let's go ahead and start. Amanda, why don't you introduce yourself?
Hi, everyone. Just a quick shout out to all the students out there. And I know that there's some Turning Point prep year out there, and I see you. Just wanted to say, Amanda McKinney, I'm running for Congressional District 4 in Washington State. Yeah, We're going to have conservative principal representation in Washington State.
It's hard to find a conservative in Washington, but your district's pretty conservative.
We are very conservative. Hey, there's a sunny, insane side to Washington State, everybody. And you know, sometimes the darkest skies have the brightest stars.
That's great. She looks so beautiful. That was wonderful. And there she received official endorsement from Turning Point USA. And I will put that in the chat so that y'all can watch that. And again, talked about this ballot initiative and amazing. And you can see here, this ballot initiative, Let's Go Washington is the organization that helped to organize 1 million signatures. Wow. And this would protect women and girls in their sports. So that's awesome. That's amazing. And there are some Moms for Liberty leaders that were instrumental in getting that initiative passed, not passed yet, but getting all the signatures for that initiative so it can get on the ballot so that those in Washington can vote for sanity. And it's amazing. I want to talk more with them. I'm going to post more about this too. So great things happening and a lot of hope. I hope everyone walks away with a lot of hope and a fire in their belly to participate in local government, whatever level you're comfortable with, but just attend, show up, get to know what's happening in your local communities, in your state, and don't think that you can't make a difference. Even in the state of Washington, they're conservatives, they're common sense people, and they're making a difference. They're not just saying, oh, I'm in blue state, trifecta, nothing I can do. There's always something that you can do. And there's always a way that you can fight back and that you need to fight back 100%. I also wanted to share, here is the website where if you are interested in learning more, you just go to McKinney, like McKinney for Washington.com. And here you can learn more about her. She is a current Yakima County Commissioner running for Congress to deliver proven common sense conservative leadership to Washington, D.C. And she definitely proved that in our conversation today. So thank you for joining me, and always stay curious, stay engaged, stay informed, and watch Unleashed because it's a pretty cool show, right? We have so many great interviews coming up. I am packed. My calendar is full. A lot of good conversations. So thanks for being a part of this one. Have a good rest of your night. Bye.
Parents, you must always hold the keys to the AI toolbox. AI is already in classrooms across the country. Millions of teachers are using AI in various ways. They use it to grade papers and to streamline their workload. They use it to create individual learning plans for students. And students are already using AI too. They're using it for research in the classroom, and some are using it to create new technology and use it in innovative ways to advance their learning. It's really exciting to see what's happening. Truly, there's also a downside to having AI in the classroom without any guardrails. We hear stories in the news already across the country, and parents are testifying that this is happening.
Parents who say character AI is also pushing dangerous content to kids, and at times acting like a digital predator.
These companies knew exactly what they were doing. They designed chatbots to blur the lines between human and machine.
1 in 5 high school students reported that they or someone they know has had a romantic relationship with AI.
Researchers found the bear openly discussed sexually explicit and dangerous content with kids.
The other problem that we're seeing with AI is it's not always true.
Sometimes AI can tell you what you want to hear, not necessarily what is true.
It's not helpful when students just use it to directly cheat.
Parents have to understand the algorithms that are basically set up to direct our children to look at certain things, feel certain things, and believe certain things. That's the role of a parent, not an algorithm.
We are living in a moment of wonder, and it is our responsibility to prepare children in America.
Moms for Liberty is leading the charge on unifying, educating, and empowering parents to understand AI and how it's impacting our children. We're already doing this by joining the AI and Education Task Force under the leadership of First Lady Melania Trump. I've personally attended 2 meetings at the White House on this. I've spoken to members of the cabinet about the guardrails that need to be put in place to protect our children. Because we understand the importance of empowering you to protect all children, we've created model policy that you can download and take directly to your school board and ask them to adopt. We've created school board speeches that you can change and modify for yourself and use to speak to your school board in a public forum. We've created draft policy for the state level that you can go meet with your state legislators and ask them to sponsor the bill and start moving it through the process so that all the children in your state will be protected.